I came to Kenya first time 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And today it is a very, very different country in every aspect, basically for good. Human rights and governance has been a key pillar in Norway's engagement with Kenya all from the beginning, during these 60 years. It also did lead to a very special episode in our bilateral relations when Norway was asked to leave.
I love traveling. Do you?
I love traveling.
Good.
I've traveled my whole life.
Me too.
In fact, I've lived almost 20 years in 6 African countries.
We have the pleasure of speaking to Gunnar Andreas, the Norwegian ambassador to Kenya, Somalia and Seychelles, with his extensive experience across the African continent. We'll touch on security and peace building, tourism and travel, and his personal insights on human rights and good governance. Hello and welcome to Globe Traction. My name is Pasil Telewa. Tonight, we continue our Kenya-Norway at 60 series as promised last Saturday. If you missed our conversation, please head over to YouTube to catch it. Today, we delve into the enlightening discussion of the past, present, and the future of Kenya-Norway relations. Stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Mr. Gunnar,
sure.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to
Thanks
meet you
for having me on.
face to face. Yeah. So, karibu uko nyumbani wewe.
Oh, you know,
Sio?
my Swahili is
It's terrible.
really kidogo.
Kidogo kidogo. Kwanza unajaribu. Yeah. So I was just speaking with Mr. Ide, and he's more of a guest. Comes to Kenya and lives, but you're the host.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to hear what this man has in store for us. And I would like to start from something very crucial.
Okay.
For the Kenyan, Republic, and something very crucial for the continent as well, which is security and peace building. Yeah. I don't know, and that's why I'd like to know, what is it that the Norwegian, what is it that Norway is doing in terms of security and peace building? Because as you understand, there's lots of instability security-wise within the region. Yeah. So
we have a long history of trying to contribute to political solutions to instability and to conflict.
Yeah.
And Kenya is one of the countries where we really worked together for a long time, dating back late 90s, leading up to the peace agreement for Sudan, working on South Sudan issues together. And today, again, now Norway is supporting Kenyan government on what is called the Tumaini initiative, trying to facilitate the parties to implement the agreement signed in 2018, implement what they have agreed to, what they have signed up to.
Yeah. What is the agreement about?
The agreement is the peace agreement for South Sudan.
Yes.
And an extensive, comprehensive peace agreement for South Sudan after the crisis broke again in 2016. Now, that has not been implemented, or rather some progress, but extremely slow. So I would say it's not been implemented.
I love traveling. Do you?
I love traveling.
Good.
I've traveled my whole life.
Me too.
In fact, I've lived almost 20 years in 6 African countries. 20
years in 6 African countries? What is it that you love in African countries?
I don't know.
So
it must
much?
be something, because I really love Norway as well. And in a year and a half, I'm retiring, and I will retire in Norway. My heart is there, my roots are there. But what had always taken me, I don't know, people, first of all, and lastly as well, the people.
The people.
Yeah.
Let's talk about tourism and travel between
absolutely.
these 2 countries. What is it that you're doing in terms of enhancing tourism and movement of Norwegian, especially, to visit Kenya?
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to talk about Mara or the coast. People know all about that. But my idea, what I'm doing, is I'm trying to promote the mountains.
You're trying to promote the mountains
in
because
Kenya.
you like
not
skiing
only Mount
as well.
Kenya, but the Aberdares and Mount Elgin and all the other fantastic areas in Kenya. Underutilized, underdeveloped, massive potential for tourism in Kenya.
Good. So are there any specific initiatives you brought on board?
Well, I've been raising it with the Kenyan authorities and the tourism industry.
Yes.
Look at Tanzania. They have a package, Kilimanjaro and the coast.
Yes.
Why don't you make a package in Kenya? Mount Kenya and the coast. Fantastic opportunities, and Mount Kenya is a much nicer mountain than Kilimanjaro, much more exciting. 1,000 meters lower, yes, but that means more people will be able to do it, because there's a lot of people on Kilimanjaro who pays a lot of money, much more than you have to pay here. Get sick, can't make it. 5,000 meters Mount Kenya, you make it. And it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. I've been there 3 times now and can't get enough of it.
I'm glad I didn't say that. You know, it did come from my own mouth. It came from yours. And the fact that you're not a Kenyan speaks so much about that. However, I'm thinking 60 years is a long relationship, Mr. Gunnar, to be honest.
Yeah, it is.
Don't you think it's fair?
Diamond Jubilee. if it was a marriage, it was a diamond jubilee.
Yeah. Don't you think it's time for you to just flex a little bit on your foreign policy about this visa issuance, you know, and the visa fees between these 2 countries?
I mean, for us, it's not a big issue. I mean, the visa system now works well, and we don't have any problems with that. I think I should be a bit careful on trying to say how many Norwegian tourists are here per year, but I think we are talking 20,000 Norwegian tourists to Kenya every year, which is quite considerable.
Yeah, so on this end, I was talking about Kenyans to Norway.
To Norway?
Yeah.
Yeah, you mean the opposite. Yeah. But, you know, we are a member of Schengen as well, and it's difficult to, you know, so we are bound somehow by the Schengen regulations, and not easy to go on a solo journey when you are part of something larger than that.
I believe everything starts with policy and, you know, negotiations. So it shouldn't be difficult for bigger, you know, partners like you and Germany who have had the longer relationships to negotiate. But anyway, I hope you give it a thought that we can have.
And we do get, I mean, we do get quite a lot of Kenyans coming to Norway, of course,
Yeah, so that we can be traveling with only 10 euros as our visa processing fee, to be honest, because then
I don't think I will guarantee neither that nor the price.
No, I was like, just think about it. Think about it. I want to speak a little bit more on education again with you, education relations, you know, and partnerships. And when I speak about education, my concern is the younger Kenyan who wants to pursue their education in Norway, you know, perhaps the University of Oslo or any other university. Have you spoken about any, you know, increased opportunities for scholarships and those kind of things?
We used to have scholarships. We don't have it anymore. And
why?
If you ask me personally, there are many reasons for that, but I would have loved to see it coming back again, because when I meet people here in Kenya, people my age, many of them, you know, they speak about how scholarships were instrumental in their education.
They strengthen the partnerships as well.
But again, there are many reasons why we don't have that anymore. But what we do have is institutional cooperation in the educational sector, especially on the university level. There is I took a printout, and there's a huge file of universities in Norway and Kenya that are working together on really massive programs. So that's one area where we have seen development, which we didn't have before to the same level.
I'd like to know your personal impressions, you know, when you came to this country, because looking ahead, within the continent, we speak about regional integration, and, you know, we speak about trade. But from your first impression and where you sit currently, what is it that we are yet to harness? What is it that we need to exploit further?
I came to Kenya first time 40 years ago. And today it is a very, very different country in every aspect, you know, basically for good. Just the development of Nairobi. When I came, you know, it was a low silhouette city, and now you have all the high rise, and they have all come up in the last 20 years. The industry, the tech industry, everything has changed in many ways. But there are also aspects that haven't changed. You know, if you go to the periphery, if you go to the northeast, the east, the part of the Asal counties, there is a poverty level here as well that shouldn't be in a middle-income country. So the policies of leveling out, of reducing the gap between the haves and the have-nots, that's an area where Kenya needs to continue developing and growing and developing policies. But beyond that, I think Kenya is really on the right track. We see a growing interest among Norwegian companies. There are around 50 Norwegian companies engaged in Kenya at the moment. We have there are 3 countries in sub-Saharan Africa with a famous Norwegian sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest wealth fund. has invested in South Africa, Nigeria, and in Kenya. In their terms, not a lot of money, but the fact that they are here tells you a lot, because they are very risk averse. They have a very, very long-term investment horizon, and they don't invest in countries unless they are certain that there is a return here. So the Sovereign Wealth Fund have invested on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Very good signal for the Kenyan economy.
You're telling me that you're retiring, and you want to retire soon, but retire in Norway.
Yeah.
There is the immigration aspect of diplomacy, if I should call it. And there are countries, especially in Europe, that are really worried about immigrants and immigration because of the resources and opportunities. What is your take on that? And especially for the fact that most of the immigrants are taking the illegal routes, to get to these particular countries. But again, these particular countries that are trying to curb immigration also require more labor. How can we balance that?
No, that's a good question. And I mean, yes, we need, because Africa is a young continent. We are an old continent. Europe is an old continent. Norway is an old country when you look at the composition of the population. So we need, we need more working hands. We need more labor power. But that also needs to be regulated. And of course, you need highly skilled jobs. There are less and less manual jobs. If you go 20, 30 years ago, back in time, manual jobs were quite common. They are fast disappearing. And I mean, if you take this from another perspective, and whether you are a normal person in Norway or in Sweden or Denmark or wherever it is seen as a challenge. When large numbers of people from all over the world suddenly come in, and you don't understand what's happening, and a lot of these are young men. We have to, when you look at the composition of the group, so there is some uncertainty what's happening here.
Yeah.
But there is another aspect as well, which I would like to ask, and that is, why do so many young people risk their lives crossing the Sahara, crossing the Mediterranean, risking their lives rather than staying in their own country? What is it in their home country that drives them away rather than make them stay? That is a question that the political leadership in the countries that these young men are leaving from have to ask themselves some hard and difficult questions.
Those are hard and difficult questions, and most of these young men don't know the extent that they put their families, into the risks they put their families into. Because again, we are speaking about you not knowing about where your daughter or your son is, and never hear about them 10, 20 years, whatever, till you die. But that is to get us to the human rights, conversation. How has Kenya and Norway, worked on human rights? And when you speak about human rights, I'm sure from where you sit, you can understand. But how have the two countries enhanced, the human rights values, and just to make sure that people have a dignified way of life?
Human rights and governance has been a key pillar in Norway's engagement with Kenya all from the beginning during these 60 years. It also did lead to a very special episode in our bilateral relations when Norway was asked to leave because of what was seen as meddling in internal affairs relating to human rights and governance. So for 7 years we were out before coming back again. Today we have an excellent bilateral relations, and we're working very openly on governance and human rights issues, whether it is with the Kenyan Human Rights Commission or with Kenyan organizations working on people's right to have access to information. We have been supporting the work of human rights in the private sector, the guidelines and handbook for human rights in private sector. So this is a key element in our dialogue as well. But more importantly is I would say today, the political dialogue, how we work together, very closely working together in the Security Council when we were there at the same time 2 years ago. And how we now work on global issues. And I think the visit of the foreign minister really emphasized how we look eye to eye on so many global things. And that's the direction where we are going. And then you see on the back of that, Norwegian companies coming in, investments, trade, but the days of development assistance, development aid, that is changing. With that being said, Norway is still a considerable provider of funds to Kenya through multilateral systems. Either it is through core funding, earmarked core funding, or earmarked funding through the UN system here in Kenya.
Okay. There's a lot of wars happening right now.
Yeah.
You know, there are countries that are not seeing each other. I mean, countries where families are not seeing each other and whose families have been separated because of wars. And from your diplomacy expertise, I would like to hear from you. When do you know that negotiation has failed? When does war come up? How does it happen?
It's a good question, and I mean it's own. There are very, very few examples, if any, of a war ending on the battlefield. Normally it ends somewhere in a room where people sit down and they negotiate peace agreements or a peace deal. But that might take a long time, and we have many examples of how things have been going up and down and returning to war again. Again, something which is very close to my heart, because I lived 3 years in Juba and followed this very, very closely, you know, from independence in 2011.
Yes, so you
conflict conflict broke in 2013. We very engaged, trying to solve that, getting back to, you know, a positive development. Conflict broke again in 2016, and here we are again and again, to return to Kenya's initiative now on the Tumaini initiative, which we support economically, politically, and diplomatically.
Now, up to something a little bit, you know. Tell me about your kids. How are they doing?
They are doing great. You know, they are kids, even though they are adults.
They'll always remain kids.
They always remain my kids, but no, they have kids. So now I'm a grandfather, happy grandfather of 3. I have 2 grandchildren in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, and a granddaughter in Oslo.
2 now?
3.
They're just 2 or 3?
2 in Addis and 1 in Oslo. 3 altogether. But my own kids, 2.
Your own kids too. Yeah. Have they been to Africa where everything is going on with you?
Well, they lived for 4 years in Addis Ababa.
Yes.
And they really enjoyed that. My son is back now as a diplomat, so now his children is going to the same school as he used to go to. You know, so there is something about circle of life, or whatever you would like to say. Yeah.
Then that means he likes what the father was doing.
Must have.
So nice to hear that. How have you raised them, and the fact that you've been in diplomacy and just having an engaging career?
How I've raised them? I don't know. I'm trying to raise them to become good people, proper people, decent people.
For you? Has it been easy for you?
Not very difficult either. I mean, I have
You're lucky then.
My wife during 45 years now soon, so we have worked very closely together. And you know, when you are 2 who see eye to eye on how you want to see things, it becomes challenging, not always easy, but the end result, I must say, when I look at the 2 of them, they have become very, very good.
You're proud father.
I'm very proud.
Yeah.
I'm very proud.
My regards to your grandkids.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope you see them soon. But I'd like to say thank you for making the time.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate, I know you're a busy guy, but I wanted to get, you know, a conversation with you, and within a short notice, you slotted in the time. So
My pleasure.
I want to say asante sana.
Asante.
Karibu, you say karibu.
Yeah, I say karibu.
So I understand Norway can be really cold.
It can be very cold.
Yeah, really cold.
If you think of a normal freezer, 20 degrees minus centigrades.
I know.
That is, you know, and you find places that goes down to minus 40. Twice as cold as in a normal freezer. How do you deal with that?
I don't know how you guys survive, to be honest.
No, I mean, your body needs to get used to it. I tell you, when I first moved to my first country outside Norway was in Zambia as a young student. Yes. Zambia is not too bad because, you know, it's quite pleasant.
Yes,
But Ghana, hot and humid. Juba, very, very hot. But, you know, your body gets used to it. And the same thing with the cold weather. You get used to it. But in the beginning, in the first time, people cry, people suffer.
I know. How do you even get... So are you the type to thrive in the cold, or are you the type to thrive in the hot?
Both of them, both.
Hot and warm, cold?
Hot and warm, yeah. I can do both.
Yeah, so could that be the reason why you've stuck around Africa for this long?
to enjoy even better the cold weather back
Yeah.
home. There must be something like that.
Oh, yeah. You don't get to go home during winter, do you?
I do, yeah.
You do?
Yeah. Go back skiing, skiing.
Oh, yes,
and,
skiing.
Oh,
Yeah. And that's why I thought I'd be kind enough to give you a little something here.
Oh.
So that when you go and you want to do some skiing.
Look at that.
Look at that. I hope it can keep you warm.
Absolutely.
Just a little something.
Yeah. Thanks for
to
having me.
Remind you
thanks for the great gift.
Yeah, to remind you of our generosity. I'm sure you know Kenyans.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for
Thank
making
you
the
very
time.
much.
And have yourself a pleasant day.
Same to you.
Okay.
And have a nice weekend.
Thank you, you too. That wraps up our Kenya-Norway at 60 series. I hope you gained some valuable insights. Many thanks for watching the show today. And make sure you join us again next Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Kenyan time only on KTN News. And if you have a story you'd like to share with us, please don't hesitate. Write to us through globetraction at standardmedia.co.ke or DM us on our social media platforms at globetraction. You can also follow me on my social media platforms at Pasil Selewa on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube for more behind the scenes. But until then, see you next time. Same time, same place. Bye-bye for now.